overview of how this is going to run. So the RFQ was attached to the agenda packet. Maybe we'll just kind of walk through it, and if anybody has any questions or edits, they can jump right in at that time. So first one is just some special notes for it. There is a pre-qualification conference for prospective firms that will go up to the high school. This August 10th date, I just threw out as a placeholder. I'll coordinate with Sam and Scott and make sure there's a good time.
You say August 10th, but you meant August 12th, right? Just I'm making sure I'm on the right document.
Yeah, I'm doing this.
Right here, it's special notes. This is what it should look like.
It's attached to the agenda. You in the agenda?
You're good.
Yeah.
So
Here, take this one, Kathy.
Oh, I got it. I got it. Sorry, I just went too far.
yeah.
No, I was looking at.
Right here.
I'm moving at the wrong pages. All right.
We went too far.
Yeah,
I know.
yeah.
You're jumping ahead.
Oh, you know what? I don't
No,
think
the schedule.
I think I did double
reference
copy.
to
I
it.
see one side of the page. I'm wondering why I don't have sides. Okay, there. Thank you. Got it.
So this is just a few notes to the bidders, just really about the pre-qualification meeting, to do a walkthrough, have them ask questions, an opportunity for that. Nothing really surprising here, just provide pre-qualification certificate with your proposal to show you're pre-qualified through DAS. Just some logistics for the bidder to know there. So are there any questions on this one? Again, that August 10th is a placeholder, but it was just kind of stuck in the, we're giving about 3 weeks. That was just at within the first week. So it still gives them ample time. We'll skip a couple pages ahead to section 2.1, which goes over the question aspect. People can submit questions. Sam has been the designated person to receive them. He'll work with CSG, our architect, to make sure those questions are answered.
Does he know that?
He knows that.
Okay.
Not yet.
Yeah, no, he knows that.
Page right.
They'll have an opportunity to, we'll issue an addenda with a list of all the questions that'll be posted on the same place that the bid solicitation is posted. And in the timeline further back in this document, it'll say when those will be posted by.
Okay.
Scope of work. We have to remember that this is for both the new Farmington High School and the central office renovation. So we made it clear that there are 2 of those in this. And then we broke down, just to be extra clear, there's a little, I put $2 signs in one spot. What our budgeted construction costs, FF&E costs for the 2 separate projects are. So a little bit more of a breakdown for them to know that up front. We will, in the project description, plug in the square footage, the students, all of that, but just to give them an idea of what the project that was approved at referendum is. And then the same with backgrounds, I'll just add in a brief description of Farmington Public Schools. So that will be just put in. Now I'll have CSG, Chris or Mark kind of walk through some of the important aspects of the instructions, because this was a template that you guys had done for previous bids. Nothing really surprising here. So if you guys want to just maybe highlight a few of them, and then when we get in scope of services, I'll jump in again.
Sure. So A is just talking about the interview presentations when we get to that point after we shortlist. B, a conceptual construction schedule. That'll be a little bit more in-depth construction schedule, more than a milestone schedule that we're going to give them. That's one of the things that we need to talk about, is the overall milestone schedule and what the reality of the completion looks like for occupying the building. Does it have to be September of 24? Can it be December of 24 and then roll into the abatement and demo of the existing building in the beginning of 25, and then ultimately finish in the fall of 25? You know, those are some of the things that I think we still need to flush out a little bit in terms of where we are right now, just so that we can give them an idea of what we're looking for overall milestones.
So like big milestones.
Big milestones.
Yeah, not little.
Not little, right. The schedule that they'll give us in their response package will be a little bit more detailed than this. not as detailed, obviously, as when they're brought on board, but it'll break down a few other things as to how they think they're gonna achieve it.
Yeah,
Some milestones.
They may or may not put a critical path schedule together to
Right,
kind of just say,
High level.
you know, we have to hit this point in order to get to the next point. And so we'll kind of, you know, critical to completing the
Yeah.
project. And then there's a million tasks in between each one of
Yes.
those, and we'll see that schedule at some point.
Okay.
I'll go, letter F.
Yes, that's very clear. I'm glad you
Yes.
mentioned it.
The successful construction manager would be allowed to self-perform any construction trade work within their licensing capabilities. So Alicia and I have talked to, the state, and they have expressed some interest in allowing construction managers to self-perform. They've had some successful projects with that. So that would be, you wanna to,
So
yeah, probably.
We're like, okay, Johnny, like, really? Should I be-
self-perform is, there's some construction managers out there that have their own crew and do their own work. They.
For
example would
some
be-
trades.
Right,
yeah.
for some
Certain
trades,
things,
some work, whether it be excavation, it could be concrete, it could be, trying to think of
Yeah,
what else.
combination of
Like, so
things.
not
Some
only
trades,
are you the
trade,
general
trades.
manager, but you're also able to actually do some work.
Right.
That helps to keep the process, the idea that helps to keep the process moving. It helps to keep the cost down because it's your own team rather than outsourcing.
And having to outsource everything.
all the time.
Right.
So,
Could I ask you a question?
yeah.
Now, is that something, again, it seems fine to me, but that's something that, is it typically that the town does not do? Because I mean.
It's not typically done
Right.
right now, it's kind of a
Like
new thing. There's not many firms that do it.
Okay, because it would be like such a big firm that they'd actually
Yes.
have the trades in
Yes.
their firm.
Yes.
Yes.
Right.
And so if their trades are in their firm, instead of contracting out that trade, they're gonna take the trade internally.
Right, there's still a process for them to go through that.
Yeah.
They still have to bid it separately, like, there's still an approval process.
Yes, it's not just like.
It's
my
not just a
contract.
guarantee, so
Okay.
we're not just picking X, Y,
That was
Z,
my
N.
question, like we're stuck with.
No,
No,
no.
not at all.
They still have to bid on it.
There's still a whole process. It's just in the event that they do have that arm
Yep.
within them,
Mhm.
They are
They are-
allowed to do it.
they are able to submit a bid
So like
on their own work.
ONG might be in.
They might, right, they might
You've seen
submit
their
for
trucks on the
excavation
highways, and you've
or.
Yeah.
seen their, right.
Is there a problem, and I don't have a problem with it, sounds like it would be fine, but but would it be let's say it's O&G, it's our
Mhm.
construction manager, and O&G has a trade that they want to bid on
Mhm.
one of the trades. So they bid on it as the arm of O&G. Who is reviewing the bids that now came in to O&G?
ONG.
Right,
Right.
right.
The light bulb just went off.
Yeah.
Yeah, so
Right.
again, because really, we, as the building committee, don't have oversight on those
No.
bids, that's what
You
we're
do
doing.
not, correct.
But if the state of Connecticut said that they've had success with that, I mean, a little bit of a light bulb says, is that really a great thing? When
Right.
you're the
You're the
person
one,
that's
yeah,
right.
opening up the bids.
And like I said, there is a process somewhat in that they still have to submit a bid.
Publicly.
Yes.
That the package is still publicly advertised, so
Right,
other
yes.
people could still bid on it.
Right,
It just gives them the ability to put their own number in, so
Okay.
it, you know.
but just to be
No.
clear,
Yeah.
we're not reviewing it,
No.
it's them
No.
reviewing
Yes.
their own.
It's
Yes.
still under their
Their-
GMP.
okay.
umbrella.
Yes.
And that's why when we were kind of evaluating this, we worded it so that we're not requiring a firm to
Correct.
submit this to
Yes.
self-perform, but we're
just
open
saying it's
to
a lot,
it.
it's.
We're
yes.
open to self-performance.
Correct.
So if the firm that's selected has that capability, great. If the firm that's selected doesn't,
Okay,
no problem.
So if the bids come in and the construction manager decides or has it, they're not the lowest bidder, do they still have the option to do it at the lowest bid number? How does that work?
I don't believe so, it's still lowest
It's
qualified.
still lowest qualified, okay. So if they want it, and they're all submitted at the same time, so it's not like.
Yeah, they don't know the
You're
numbers.
doing
Yeah.
numbers before the
Yeah.
numbers go in.
Everything, right,
Okay.
right.
So that's what we were kind of like, we'll put, the state seems to be pretty excited about this opportunity and using it in the future, so we were like, we're open to it. but we're not going to lock ourselves
Right.
into self-performance,
Right.
so.
I think along the same lines, I should note that, conversation I had with Richard, so this was after our meeting the other day, I called him back to ask him about the questions, and he brought up similar, he said, the state's sort of saying sort of this a similar thing, and I said, oh, that's, interesting that you bring that up. And he started to lean towards not necessarily CM, but GC. And that, we should make that recommendation, or at least not a recommendation, but put it out there that we could possibly bid this as a general contractor. And that's the look I made on the other side of the phone, was to say, Richard, I've never seen, if we're talking about a 10, 12, maybe even $20 million project to go lump sum GC contract
Yeah.
versus a guaranteed maximum price with a CM at risk. That's a big difference. I said, I don't even know if you're going to find a GC that's going to be able to do this kind of volume, monthly volume. And, he spit out a few names that said, I bet if you call them, they'd be willing to bid this GC. But so
Not have a construction manager?
correct. So
Right.
the administration of this would have to look completely different, almost where town of Farmington would need a full-time on-site person to oversee some of that, like a clerk of the works.
Like a full-time inspector
That would
/
Yeah.
Like a CA, that would completely change this
I
entire, yeah.
Yeah.
no.
Well,
So-
I do too.
Why did he say?
That's-
Why would we even want,
Yeah,
what's the benefit
There is-
of that, except more
Not
work?
not on
Yeah,
more
$115 million.
management.
Well,
We have that
the only
capacity.
benefit is if the costs go overruns, unless we make changes,
Sure.
you're stuck with the
They're
price.
stuck with the
That's-
price.
That's the only benefit,
All right.
you're locked in.
Got
Right.
it.
So the only time you're gonna get people to do anything like that is if they're confident that they can lock in those material prices
Okay.
for a while.
Sure.
Um,
Your contingency
I don't-
numbers
especially
would
right
need
now.
to
In the
be
market now.
higher. But
How could
historically,
you ever?
your price point is lower because you're not paying that CM oversight charges, and typically, especially early on in the process, I don't want to say pad numbers, but ensure that they've got numbers carried.
covered.
Yeah, that it's covered through the process. And so, with a GC lump sum bid, it is what it is, they own it. But again,
We've done a
it's not,
GC,
yeah.
we've done a GC at a small project, but
Yeah.
then we've hired a clerk of the works full-time
That's-
to watch
To
the
manage
That's
project.
what I'm
it,
saying,
yeah.
you've got a whole
You have
process,
no
so
knowledge of this ever being done on a project this.
not this
No,
size.
not this size.
Moving
So
on.
where did
He
Rich
brought
get
it-
the idea?
He brought it up that the state, particularly Costa, has been pushing for this, and he's heard him say these kinds of things in other meetings, and I said, well, I've heard about CM self-performing pieces of the work,
Yeah.
but I've not heard of a GC,
It
so.
doesn't change like the cost structure, it doesn't change like the labor rates, it doesn't change any of
No.
that.
No,
And then they just have a full gamut of, they're not public bids anymore. They could get 5 or 6 bids and then do their own. They have full, and then obviously at that point, they're not, I don't know, how does the at-risk part stay? Because when you're an at-risk CM and
Right.
one of the trades is a low bidder and he screws up, you're on the hook for it. Where if you're a GC, I guess it must be, the numbers are so big, this is outside of my.
I'm with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm with you, yeah, so I'm gonna report back that, thank you for your recommendation, I put it in front of the professional committee, and
Right.
you
We
guys
should
can
start
decide.
with the the construction manager self-performing.
Yeah.
See how
Yeah.
that goes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I kind of like the self-performing idea, and I have a lot of time to think about it, but looking at the way I have my business structure, I keep some trades in-house for
Yeah.
the sole purpose of keeping schedule intact.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
And even though they may cost me a little bit more,
Yeah.
the overall project gets done faster, it actually is more beneficial and less
Which-
headache.
And
Right.
time
So I
Which-
can see
right, that's what I was
them
gonna
taking
say.
some of the
That's what they were
pieces,
saying.
even underbidding some of the
Yes.
pieces for the purpose of controlling that piece. in
Sure.
order to keep
Yes.
everything
Yeah.
That was
in-house.
basically the,
I
Right.
kind of like that idea.
yeah.
That's the idea in theory, however, when you're talking this kind of volume, I mean, on average, we're talking 4 million a month.
Yeah.
That's,
It's a lot of money.
yeah, and there's not many, well,
And their packages, they need to be available,
right, it's, yeah.
it's, I've seen
Well,
it
they-
work well, and
they-
I've seen it work not so well.
Even if they bid it and then they don't have the manpower, they can always subcontract
That
it
is
true.
within their own, so.
That is
You know,
true.
the
That
minute that
is-
there's one firm out there that doesn't have anything going on or is
Right,
slow.
Sure,
They
Plus, a
bring
lot of
somebody
those
else
guys have, union agreements that they can get more helpers.
yeah, pull off the
So
bench,
I-
yeah.
I don't see a downside, I'll put it that
Exactly.
way.
Right.
Exactly.
If they feel there's an upside, then let them do it.
Right,
Sure,
if they can sell it, right.
yeah, they're right, they're gonna be able to sell.
Yeah, so that's why we chose this specific language, like, we're open to it, we'll see what happens. Anything else, Chris or Mark, in the scope of services?
We're at the pre-con estimates.
So it's just outlining, the requirements that the CM would be doing at each phase, the pre-construction and then into the construction, scope of services for bidding, just kind of all the responsibilities that the CM would be expected to do.
Yeah, they'll be involved in the cost estimating of things as we're moving forward. Same thing with the phasing and logistical planning of this. They're gonna play an important add role to our professional team, bringing them on now.
And then we have the qualification format, just requesting, the cover letter, putting page limits so we don't have 200 page responses, the copies so that everybody on the committee can have a copy, all of those things. And then I wish I numbered these pages, but there is, kind of a schedule, a couple pages back in the table, that we can briefly go over. So, like I said, we will have this in front of the full committee at our next meeting, which is, I believe, the 28th. And then we will advertise this by the end of the month. The pre-qualification conference tentatively August 10th, but that can be changed probably sometime that week. The question deadline was a few days after, just to give firms an opportunity to, after the conference, think about some things, maybe submit some questions there. We will review the questions and then within 24 hours, issue the final addenda. The deadline for proposal submissions would be August 20th. At that time, we would take everything, we would distribute it to the building committee members. That gives us ample time to review and submit our proposals back. I'll probably give everybody a timeline to get it to me, to be determined, but then we would evaluate those at our already scheduled September 8th meeting. That meeting, we will shortlist, let those people on the shortlist know and give them the request for proposal, which has the fee proposals for both the central office renovation and the new high school construction. Interviews would be at our next meeting, which is September 22nd, and then do what we typically do, interview in public. Then we go into executive session, come out of executive session and name the firm that we intend to award on. And usually the motion is contingent on due diligence by the town, reference check, all of those things. So the tentative award date I put for the next day, but it'll probably be, it'll become public that is our top firm that we've selected. And then we'll work with this subcommittee to come up with a contract.
Do we shortlist an executive session too?
Yes, we do. We do. We come to the meeting, we go into executive session, review the response for proposals, we all kind of compile the response sheet, and then we'll come out with the short list.
Chris and Mark, two questions I have
Mhm.
is, do you think this seems pretty straightforward, it's not complicated, it's a basic construction manager. Do you think we've given ourselves enough time to answer questions? Because I know that we're flipping them over. I just wanted, that's one of my things that I just wanted to make sure you would know how complicated the questions are. That,
Right.
we have to go to an architect or we have to go to you, that's just a thought. And then the other thought is that how many proposals do you think we could potentially get? If we're just shortlisting them, we only probably need one meeting to do a short list at the.
Yeah, I would say you're probably gonna get 6 to 8.
Okay, but we're only shortlisting, we're not actually interviewing, so I think one would probably
You're
be
only
enough to do that. But then just the other thing is the questions. I just want to make sure we have enough time we're not all running around with chickens with our heads cut off trying to get answers in, the timeframe.
Even if you get more than that, I don't see the list of really truly qualified CMs unless you've got out-of-state people coming, where they're not gonna be able to show that they've got Connecticut school experience, that's gonna disqualify them right away. So I think, I think it's gonna be an easy
And
conversation.
the questions, I mean,
Just-
we're
just-
saying,
Yeah,
we're
sure.
saying the final addenda is issued on the 13th and proposals are due on the 20th. Even if we push the 13th to the 14th or the 15th,
Okay,
the answers to those questions aren't gonna significantly impact the RFQ response. The biggest piece of it I could see them having questions on is gonna be the schedule.
okay. Yeah, I
Yeah.
just wanted to make sure, because it's like the deadline is the 12th, and then we'll have the answers on the
Yeah.
next day.
Yeah,
And,
we
we
can-
have a lot of
we can
different
do that.
partners here that we may have to
Yeah.
ask questions
Yes.
to, so.
Yeah, we can look and maybe I think the 13th was like a week before the final proposals due, so then it gives them time to take the answers to those questions and change, or, we can play around with these dates in the middle, like the pre-construction conference question, all of that, but we have some flexibility there.
Right, and I think with the scope of work being new construction, it limits the amount of questions really that, if this were renovated new, where there was a lot of unknowns, I think there might be a lot more questions.
Yeah, I was just.
No, it's a
making
great
su-
que-
Just
it's a-
making sure.
it's a great
Just make
point.
sure we
Yeah.
don't- We're on vacation schedules, and we got architects
Oh,
and
yeah.
school people, news reps,
I understand,
yeah.
town staff.
There's a
Yeah,
lot of
it's a
people.
It's a lot of people to make sure that we answer
Sometimes
the
you get one
questions.
question that just,
Yeah,
could
Yeah.
be quite the question.
Right.
Yeah, no, I think there's plenty of time.
okay,
Okay.
great, thank you.
I mean, even if we really got stuck on one, and we pushed the due date from the 20th to the 22nd or something, I mean, it's not,
Yeah,
it's
okay,
not gonna.
And we do have a lot of time in between that, the deadline for proposals and when we're actually shortlisting it,
Right, that's-
we've operated under before, like a 3-day turn, the poor building committee, we've
Yeah.
given them like 10 proposals to read in 2 days, so this
Okay.
time we have some flexibility.
Yeah, there's some flow in there for sure.
great, thank you.
And then the next couple sections, just criteria, general conditions, which have been in the majority of our contractor RFQs in the past, and insurance requirements, which has been reviewed by our finance department. So are there any questions, comments, edits? I know Michael's online, so I don't wanna not see him either.
There's one
I
question.
have one question, and I think the RFQ looks great. I think everything, there's nothing in there that jumps out at me that needs to be changed or added or subtracted. A question that I have relates to areas of inquiry that we'll have for each of these people in terms of the questions. So it's sort of, maybe it's jumping ahead towards interviews. So I don't know that it needs to come up now, but and it isn't necessarily formulating a question, but I think that there's a high degree of sensitivity in the marketplace. And I'm trying to think about timing. We'd be looking at basically creating a GMP almost about a year from now. Is that about right? Maybe a little less than a year, about a year?
Yes,
Yes.
So, the world may be different a year from now, but certainly right now, how GMP, how construction managers are handling buyouts and how they're handling things that may be related to price escalation related to COVID, whether or not that's falling in an owner's contingency or a builder's contingency. That's a topic that's sort of top of mind right now. It may not be as relevant a year from now, but I'd like to, as an area of inquiry, I'm curious as to how some of these CMs are addressing that topic through contracts that they're writing now. And it may telegraph, if this is still an issue 12 months from now.
and I guess,
Again,
Mike,
Yeah, go ahead.
I think that's a great interview question
Yeah.
for our shortlisted firms. I think, point well taken when we're hearing from some of these CMs, and things are relaxing a little bit But, 30 days ago, it was, I've got a number from a subcontractor and they said they're gonna hold their number for 48 hours because they don't know what's gonna happen, right? And I think that's kind of where you're going, or.
Yeah. And I don't know that those pressures will exist, they're not gonna exist in the same way, but to understand how a CM is interpreting them now may give us an insight as to if something like that continues to exist, how will they address it with us? So as I'm saying, it's just, it's a question, a point of inquiry when we get to interviews. And so I don't mean to jump ahead. My question is, when would we put together the questions? Because I know that's an important piece that we worked out last time as we were interviewing.
I would envision that being when we do the shortlist
Yeah.
in executive session.
We should make just note of that
Yeah,
question.
yeah.
We can
Yeah.
make note of that question,
Yeah.
so I think question that we have to ask.
We will, and what we've done in the past is this subcommittee will come up with our interview format, the questions that we're looking for. So I think great opportunity to ask that.
So what you have today, I think looks great. And so I'm all in.
Johnny, did you have any questions?
Yeah, I can't find it now, but I've been looking through, but there was one paragraph on the construction manager having to hold the licensing capability of the remediation in-house.
Oh.
Is that the way I read it?
Yeah,
I'm
so
just wondering why that is.
that was sort of a caveat that we talked a little bit about if we
Asbestos
were gonna.
inheritance, hazardous materials removal contracts, if applicable, that one.
Yes.
What section is that? Because I didn't number the pages.
I find it either. Been looking for the last 3 minutes.
That just means that it's not gonna be separately,
Was that,
the
What
contract's not gonna
letter?
be separately held, sorry, it's
Letter
letter
I,
I.
2.3.
Johnny, we mentioned it in F as well, so I wasn't sure if that might be.
Yeah, well, that's the F is the self-perform, but
Right,
the I is preference to have the construction managers hold the asbestos and hazardous material removal contracts.
oh, yeah.
So, and I'm just wondering, I mean, is it, so you're asking them to self-perform this or have
No.
it within house?
No.
It's just that they're gonna, demo and abatement would be a bid package.
Okay.
So it would be, they'd be a contractor on that, that's all.
Okay.
Right, so they might say, we don't have, and then basically they're gonna put the insurances back on
The demo
their
abatement.
demo abatement.
Okay.
contracts, and He'll make
It's not
that,
gonna be a separately held contract.
Gotcha. Okay.
The monitoring and the testing, air testing, right,
Mhm.
samples,
held
all
by
that, that's all separately held by the town.
town.
But the actual demo and abatement is gonna be, would be
Okay.
a bid package of it.
Perfect.
Any other questions or comments? And again, this will be sent over to our attorney for a final review. We will send it to CASA as well, just so they have a look at it and see if they have any issues, so. Lots of eyes on it.
Yes.
So with that, Meg, I think we just need a motion to approve.
We didn't, I don't think we had any amendments, did we?
We did not.
Unless it's changes,
I just
particularly the
found a
dates,
few,
things like
I
that,
found an extra dollar sign somewhere. I found a few things that I'll just.
and maybe
update.
some date
And
adjustments.
then we'll look at the
Yeah, we
date
gotta add some
adjustments.
dates.
I'll work with Scott and then I'll talk to Chris and Mark and see realistically what we can, maybe move those a day or two, but that doesn't impact the overall.
Right,
schedule.
and the information, town background information.
Yeah,
All right,
So Meg,
Uh,
or
so-
you need a motion, I'll make a motion to approve the RFQ. Is that what you're looking for?
yes, Michael, thank you.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, unanimously approved.
excellent. So the next item is to review and approve the score sheet for the construction manager RFP. That is this. We'll need this one here. Oh, sorry. This is a typical rating form that we've done in the past. Basically, what I did is I took it right out of the section that says criteria for evaluating qualification submissions in the RFQ itself. Kind of some high level ones that we have in there that are important. There's 10 criteria that we're evaluating on. So, nothing surprising because it's all in here and this is what people are responding to and already are anticipating how they will be evaluated so that this RFQ form just matches, or the rating form just matches that.
And again, just for clarity, this is just for the for the committee, so they'll be able to shortlist.
Correct. Yep.
Mhm.
Got it.
Yep, so one for each.
Do we wanna leave them all uniform at 10?
Equally weighted.
Yeah, that's the question too.
I don't think we've done it differently in the past.
I agree. I don't think we ever
So-
waited.
And if
That's what I was gonna say, then you really start
Yeah.
digging deep into it rather than just doing your, kind of your first.
Yeah,
That's almost maybe better for the next.
I know, I agree.
And this may not matter, but halfway down, that provides a conceptual construction schedule for the proposed project. Do we want to add the word phased conceptual construction project in there at all? Does it matter? I know there's not really, it's not gonna be that, you're gonna build a new building and you're gonna demo the old, but 900 wing's gotta be in there. I don't
Right,
know.
and then,
Did we
yeah,
specify that in the RFQ that it would be a fate? Cause I don't think we did.
If we didn't, then let's just leave it alone.
Or shouldn't it be maybe more, instead of, it should be proposed projects,
Yeah, maybe that's it.
Yeah,
Here you go.
just put an S,
yeah.
because we're making it
We
as
have
two
more than one.
projects,
right,
so
Just
just put
really
an S.
complicated.
All right, perfect.
Just make an
Right.
S and then not have it complicated.
Thank you.
just continue to,
It's our pattern. It's the Farmington way. It always has to be a little different, a little special.
that seems like it's too easy.
Yeah, I think we did complicated, we're gonna try to go back.
Yeah, I'm with you. All right.
I think we need to fit and feel Farmington. I thought that was actually a really good one for the architectural firm.
It's true, though.
Made a difference.
Yeah.
It did
Yeah,
make a
I know it
difference.
is true.
So any questions, anything you think maybe we're missing?
Can I just in clarification, so like the ones where we have demonstrates ability to manage the pre-construction phase, like what would we get? That's going to, like, what kind of
So it-
response are we getting?
Yeah,
That's going to
it's
articulate
Other
that.
projects that they've
They've
done.
done
And it
previously
just
that
tells
they
like
can
the
speak
six,
to.
like the
Yeah.
results.
There's a section on that.
What they do, how they manage the pre-con process,
Okay,
Who their employees
involvement,
are, who their
right,
employee
who their
is,
employee is,
that's
yeah,
doing it.
yeah, staff,
Their pre-con manager.
Yeah,
They had ability to manage the pre-construction project, and they have like someone that has like 1 year experience, and that's the
Okay.
person that's gonna be your person on the site. I would see something like that could fit into that
Okay.
category
Right.
potentially.
Right, they'll present a team, so they'll say, we'll have our cost estimator X helping with the estimation piece, or we'll have a program manager working with us.
Yeah, in the, what's the section, qualification submission format for both pre-construction and construction, we say, briefly describe how your firm would interact under this phase, and we have A, B, C, D, E, F, asking for specific examples of methods for notifying the town of changes to the budget, any of these things, so I think that would
this is
be in
giving
there.
me a process description.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
I'll take a process.
Yeah, I take it.
Okay, that's helpful for me just to kind of understand, like, because I'm just thinking through this, like, how do I?
How are you gonna
How am
evaluate
I,
that?
like,
Yeah.
what does that mean? What's gonna differentiate one from the
Yeah.
other?
Yeah.
So I
It
guess
gives
we're
you-
looking for clarity there, complete, how level of detail.
Yeah. In no more than
Experience,
2
those kind of
pages.
things.
Sure.
Yeah, exactly. Okay.
We like concise.
Yes.
right.
Coherent and concise. Thank you.
So I'll make a motion to approve the score sheet for the construction manager with the adding of the S wherever needed by projects.
I'll second it.
All right, all in favor? Or discussion? No, I opposed. All right, we are unanimously approved for the score sheet as well.
All right, so the next one is review, and we should approve the draft agreement for Construction Solutions Group. This is for this phase of the project. Basically what we did is take the contract that they've had for the existing 2 phases, or the previous 2 phases. We added construction manager as a general term because that has now been added to the project. I did leave it blank and they'll be able to fill that in once we determine that. And really the only other change is in scope of services. CSG had given us a detailed,
What page is that, Sarah?
it begins on page 1, but it really is 2, 3,
Okay.
4,
Construction.
and 5. a very detailed list of what they will be responsible for during the pre-construction, during bidding, all of these aspects through construction and closeout.
And where did we get this information from?
CSG compiled it for us.
Pretty typical scope of services that are in
Other towns,
RFPs, right, other town RFPs. This came out of another contract that we have.
with another municipality,
Right.
for a high school project.
And did the guy from the state, Costa, did he look at this too, or was he more interested in the?
He was
construction
more
matter?
interested in the RFQ, but our attorneys will be reviewing this as well.
So there's just one typo and that's it. Okay, and page 3 has nothing behind it. I can fill it in something nice. Have to deliver coffee every day.
Nice, yeah.
Something nice.
I like this, yeah.
Boss greet Johnny is Mr. Carrier.
Take my black, thank you.
Yeah.
Term of contract has been updated just for final completion and closeout. The termination clause remains the same as it has been in the previous phases. Compensation was directly from their initial RFP response, which we had, if we all remember, we had asked for fees all the way through the project for each of the phases, each of the options, because remember, we are very had an awesome process.
Right.
So yeah, that's really the changes, the general terms, dispute resolution, insurance, all of those remains the same from what we've had all the way through. Really, it's a scope of services that's the big concentration. The fee had already been approved through the RFP process when we brought CSG on board, so really no surprises there.
So this takes us through the end.
Correct.
You're staying with us, all the way. I think I heard 2025.
Sit around this table 5 years
Are we
from
still
now.
gonna be here?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
We will all still be here in
Okay.
2025.
So do we, just because we talked, I mean, obviously we added the construction manager piece in here, but we talked about the additional commissioning agent piece.
yes.
It doesn't need to be added here.
As a general term, it probably, do you think it may
I
not
don't
be
know,
one of
I'm
the
just-
big team members, just because they'll fall under.
It'll be part of the town held contracts that we manage anyway.
Okay.
So it's not gonna matter.
Yeah, the
'Cause you
CM is
wouldn't
kind of
roll
one
it
of the
down.
big.
You wouldn't list every town.
That's what I'm
contract.
thinking. I'm like, I'm sure
Yeah.
there's a lot of those.
Yeah,
The
this is
only
the
other one we
core
talked
team.
about that we discussed RFQ for, I
Correct.
think, right? That's the
Yes.
only other one we're gonna
Yes.
have to do this for, is that
Yes.
right? Okay.
And that'll be next.
Right.
Yeah.
So we'll try and roll that in now as we meet, as this committee meets. With the CM process, we'll also start to pull in the commissioning.
Okay.
RFQ process, RFP process, so that we're not pushing it out too far. Well,
Right.
ideally, because that'll only be 1 or 2 of these meetings really for that, because that'll be a much simpler, we're not, I mean, if you want to, but we don't have to interview and go through all that, so it's just
I
kind of
think we decided
an RFQ,
not
right, not
to.
to.
interview. I can't remember. what
talked.
discussed.
Yeah, I think that's something we can,
Yeah, figure out.
Have-
Yeah,
have
like
this
we were
once we
thinking, or
discuss
thinking
the
about
full
that.
Once we
process of
review
that.
the RFQP, once we get it, then we'll, it's a meeting or 2 in here, and then we're kind of off and running with that.
so any questions about the agreement with CSG? Other than removing K?
No, I think it just goes down to the next title on the next page.
Yeah. Okay, so we'll just look for a motion to approve.
I'll make a motion to approve the draft agreement for CSG.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor? Aye. Opposed? All right, unanimously approved.
Next agenda item is to discuss the subcommittee meeting schedule. We don't need any dates at this time, but I kind of just wanted this item to discuss the upcoming things this subcommittee will be looking at. Meg just brought up the commissioning agent, which will be the next RFP that we review and we'll bring to the full committee for approval. So we'll begin working on that concurrent with when the CM is out in the field, we can start, working on that one. We will also, while the CM RFQ is out in the field, start working on our interview process, our interview questions with the RFP portion of this is like the fee proposal, what we're asking for them, because that one they're going to have to give 2 responses for the central office renovation and for the new construction. So these are kind of the things this subcommittee will be looking at in the next month or so.
Well, all ultimately before September 8th.
Yes.
That's why I just
Yeah.
flipped over to this, just
Yeah.
to kind of put it in perspective between now and the 8th, when we do the short list. Ideally, it would be nice to have the RFP document.
Yeah.
And potentially questions, if the questions are gonna be generated out of this committee,
Mhm.
available to discuss the night of the 8th.
That makes sense.
As we shortlist, yeah.
Yeah, that
Right,
makes
so
sense.
there's discussion of qualifications, shortlist, then you roll into the discussion about the RFP.
Yeah.
And questions related to the interview.
Yeah. So our this subcommittee will have already vetted, reviewed, created.
Right.
And then on that night, September 8th, the full committee will take a look at it.
So what are we thinking, maybe 2 more meetings before the 8th of this committee? Or I'm just thinking because now we're managing the additional
Right.
RFP
Yeah, we have
and
a
questions.
template we can put together and then
Yeah,
we've got,
we're several over, I mean, we can, yeah, I would think maybe 1 meeting,
Okay,
yeah, before the 8th. I don't see us needing to.
all right. Well, if we do it early enough, we
Yeah.
can figure out.
Yeah,
you
we
know,
can
and
make
get it kind of-
amendments, changes,
Yeah.
we'll have time
and
for
figure
that.
out if we need to do anything quick beforehand, but.
Now, for scheduling purposes, does this time work best for this subcommittee, or is there any preference in time, just so when we send out the doodle, maybe we can concentrate it on? I think this group has typically met first thing in the
It
morning.
has,
Yeah.
we always been early. Yeah.
Okay,
That's good.
so we'll keep that kind of time frame in mind when we send out future requests for meetings, just to simplify things.
Mhm.
So that's it, yeah, nothing we need to set in stone right now, but just kind of wanted to give a heads up that this subcommittee, since we've been on hiatus since September of 2019, will become a little bit more active.
yeah, I think just, this is really not, but there are other consultants that we've asked the architect to include, that they've, had originally excluded from their scope of work. We're asking them to go out for numbers for the environmental, for like food consultant,
Theater design.
theater design, thank you, universal design.
Universal design.
Yes, and
So
then,
those are
yes.
things that are typically managed.
We all know.
under the architect.
That's all, it's under.
They
We all
just
know.
were excluded
Yes.
for
Right,
one
for
reason
whatever
or another,
reason.
right, well, universal design was new, it came up
Yeah.
during the process.
Yes.
Theater design, I think they're just thinking that
Mhm.
because there's such a big emphasis on the theater here, that might be pertinent to have an actual
yeah,
theater
And-
designer, kitchen equipment, kitchen consultant was somehow or other excluded in the RFP, so they're gonna roll that, that's not a big consultant, but then, the environmental, so having, going through the testing process of the existing building, putting together the specs and the abatement and demolition drawings for the existing building, those, taking it, the environmental services related to the design aspect of it,
Mhm.
taking it all the way through design documents. Then the monitoring of the actual work will be a separately held contract by the town. But they're gonna get a quote to do just the design piece, the stuff that we need to be able to go out to bid.
And these, I guess, consultants that have been excluded, we will have a report to the full committee with like price and see if the full committee wants to bring these on board.
Okay.
Yeah, so that's what we, in our conversation with Richard this week, we asked them to start to get some pricing from some of the consultants that they are familiar with, and then bring it to the next committee. So hopefully next Wednesday, they'll have an ad service, so to speak, for these 4 consultants.
So if you
And then
need it,
discuss them.
you'd have the person on
Mhm.
standby type of thing, and it's paid a certain amount.
Right, yeah, so they'll
So
get
it's
it.
only if needed.
Right, but they're needed.
Okay, so it's just, it was an oversight.
They're needed, right, just, yeah, like I just kind of went through the 4, for one reason or another, they weren't included. Universal design is.
Well, we did include that one, I
is
think.
Well,
So
we don't
we-
have a consultant for that, so
Correct. We,
rather
we,
than bringing a separate
we
person
included the
on
cost.
board.
Yeah.
we included the cost for professional fees.
Is that actually a
So-
role? Somebody's a consultant for universal design? I feel like I could be that.
Perfect.
If you'd like to,
Like that's.
Just,
Submit a
like-
quote.
just wait until 26.
All right.
Okay, 2026,
So
to start something new.
speaking of
Yeah.
universal design, because we are getting some questions about it, we included the cost
Yeah,
for the consultant. Now, is this consultant going to be under the architect, or is this something we want to go through a process like this for?
And that, I guess that's the discussion,
Just
that's the
discussion.
discussion piece. Specific to the universal design, I mean, I would think that it would be part of the architect.
Yeah,
I think so.
I think that's how we envisioned
and
it.
knowing
Let
what
them
that really
manage the
means,
entire
that's
design
appropriate,
process.
yes.
Right,
I
Yes.
absolutely.
It
And
has
all
to
the
go
other
with the architect,
consultants
or you
would
miss
fall
the
under that as
opportunity
well.
to.
Like the theater consultant is typically something that the architect would
Right.
manage as well. Yeah, so I think it would,
Yes,
it
that
would
makes
fit
sense.
in with that
Well, right, they do, so they'll do their own
process.
theater and auditorium
Yeah.
design,
Mhm.
right? But bringing in a theater consultant to really review
their design.
Yeah.
is like next step,
Yeah.
right? A little bit, so it's not, they have their in-house design team, they're more than capable of designing an auditorium.
It's another set of
functions.
eyes.
It's
The
another set of eyes.
expertise.
Right, and so universal design consultant would be the same
Yes.
thing.
The
So
same,
yeah, I
sure.
think it makes sense to have it under the.
Those two
architect.
are different than food service and environmental. So food service, you need a kitchen.
Yes, yeah,
That service was just excluded in their RFP for some reason, but then the environmental is another piece. We need environmental,
Mhm.
And that's
design drawings.
typical.
Yes,
Typical,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, and that, again, the
And
cost
that
of
just wasn't
those,
spelled out at all, so
the
that was,
cost of those environmental consultants is identified in our professional fees.
Yeah.
Right.
So those dollars are carried.
it's just, they're accounting functions, just
Yeah.
moving it, and just shifting it around.
I have a question to clarify. I totally understand that the environmental consultant should be outside the scope of the architects, but I'm confused as to why the architects are not responsible for, under their fee, completing the kitchen design and completing the theater design. I don't understand why we would be paying. I understand that there are people that may do that outside the scope of who's in the firm, but that should be covered within their fee.
Right, and typically it is.
Cost of that, not us.
Right, typically it is, however, the food service was not included as part of their RFP process.
It was excluded
It
for
was
whatever
excluded
reason.
for, yeah, it was an oversight, it was just excluded. And the theater design is above and beyond their typical in-house auditorium design. That would be bringing in a specific theater consultant. I think they're thinking that because there was a study done on the auditorium separately for the music department. I think they're just thinking, do we want them to have a dedicated theater design firm involved with the team?
we don't have to.
We don't have to, no,
Right.
that one we don't have to.
I think we can get the cost of it.
Right, exactly.
One by one, and obviously
Exactly.
the kitchen one is just a mistake,
Right.
Yeah.
and then it is what it is, we have to do that. And we can
Is
look at
that universal in terms of every architect responding to the work that kitchen wouldn't have been included in all of their fees?
Yes, it was excluded for whatever, in the list of however many, 28 services, for whatever reason, food service, it was an oversight, the food service was excluded.
Wasn't missing, I think it was
It
actually
was just excluded. It was
identified as, right, not
On
applicable.
purpose. Oh,
Yeah.
like we made that
And
decision.
Correct.
I went back and I looked through all the questions and like nobody brought it up. I think everybody was so focused on the competition that we never
Yeah,
really paid attention.
It was a
to
very convoluted process that we were going, especially when we put this RFP. Remembering back to when we put that initial RFP out,
Right.
we were trying to figure out how are we going to evaluate the two competitions.
It was
on
more
each-
about
and
the-
defining
right.
what
The deliverables of the
the
competition
deliverables
was
of
than
the
it
competition,
was,
yeah,
than it was the actual services post-referendum.
yeah.
This one just happened to get missed.
So just so I understand, so environmental and universal, we already have the dollars for. We just have to make sure we're clear on the universal piece and making sure the architect understands it's gonna be managed by them. Do I have those two right? And environmental is already part of the process.
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah.
And then the theater is up for debate based on price because it's above and beyond.
Right.
And kitchen, we're basically going to have to approve.
We need a kitchen consultant.
And
Do you have an idea of what that cost would be? Just for the design of the kitchen and specs?
For all of these.
Correct. Do you, like, what's the general?
For a kitchen consultant, for this, I don't know.
You don't have to guess. You don't have to guess. We'll just,
They come back. We've asked them for price.
no need to guess.
I mean,
yeah, so universal design and theater are above what a normal architect would do. And so if we're treating those would be apples to apples. The kitchen should have been in there. It was an oversight. So that's something that we're gonna have and get a price for. And environmental is just typical. That's just how the process usually works. And we have the money. Really,
With
And you're
they're gonna
Universal.
price everything out and we have the money
They're gonna
and
price
have
it all out.
everything out. And then if the theater, because we really have a great theater program, and they say, okay, you know, we want really someone to do some expertise, just like we're really focusing on universal design, to have someone go through and make sure we've done exactly above beyond. Then theater will decide if we really want to do it and have to put the money in. Universal design, we have the money in,
Yeah.
and that's what's gonna happen.
Exactly.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah, I know, I'm trying to.
Yeah.
What pieces are.
And we'll
there.
have that at our next meeting next week with the full committee, a discussion over that. We can have it in your report. Actually, we should probably have a motion for it. Because if we're gonna approve some of these,
Probably be in business. right?
on the new business.
Yeah, because I think we're gonna have to explain each one of those
Exactly.
things.
On the environmental piece in the 1928 building that we still don't really know we're doing, I'm assuming regardless, we have to remediate it because it's gonna either be part of, whatever the town council decides to do, or if they put it out the referendum, there's time on that end.
Right.
But the environmental piece will still include the remediation plan for that 1928, whether it gets taken down
so I'm
or
glad
renovated.
you
right?
mentioned
Huh.
that, because on our phone call with Richard the other day, we were trying to decide on how they should really proceed with this, because the decision was to form a committee, to decide
What to do.
the fate of the 1928 building should the referendum pass. So there's still really no direction on it. So right now, the way we proceeded pre-referendum was that the building was gonna be demolished. So I told Richard to proceed as if the building was gonna be demolished under our scope. Because if it's not going to be demolished, the 1928 piece, everything else around it still is, so that scope still needs to happen.
Right.
Then the only work that would be credited back, so to speak, on our contract would be the demo work associated with the actual 1928 building and reestablishing the field or whatever ends up going there in that footprint.
Mhm.
But I told him, I said, I would be careful with site design within that building footprint for right now. At least provide maybe an alternate, make it a field, make it a grass area, make it something for right now in the event that the 28 building, this committee does decide to keep it. And, dollars are allocated somewhere else to reestablish that building and repair it and bring it back to life. It's gonna have to stay as part of the design. It's gonna have to be incorporated in there. So that's the direction. Really don't know.
Yeah, I think we just need to consider
Right.
options.
But yes, that building would be tested and we'd have
Regardless, it's gotta be tested
have-
and remediated.
we'd have plans to remediate it.
Right, and so is
Because
there,
either way, if it's remediated and then demoed, or remediated and then improved, it still needs to be remediated.
No,
Like you're
understood.
saying, so
understood, so that, the
It's just a matter
environmental
of
piece
who-
shouldn't
who
change
pays for
much,
that.
it's more gonna be
Right.
the
The design.
design or the
because if
demolition,
if
but just to back up a little bit, because I know there was a lot of question and a little bit of turmoil on the 1928 and messaging. We had said that we'd make the decision after, because obviously you can't make one without having the other. Is that purely a building committee function, or is that a town council, appropriating what they're looking for as a scope of, maybe they're not looking for a decision from us, or maybe they're looking to investigate what can and cannot be done?
I don't.
Not
think-
sure.
I don't think we're
Are you
doing
talking
either.
about the environmental or the actual
No, the
building?
environmental, I think we have to do regardless, but
okay.
the fate of the building.
I think that's a
itself.
total council at this
Yeah.
point.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, Perfect.
do
It's
they,
off of the building committee.
do they understand the timeliness of that?
Yeah, that was a big,
Now
that
that
was a big
we're moving
discussion.
What I'm
forward,
getting at.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that
Yeah.
committee's gonna have to be formed fairly soon and decisions are gonna have to be made because it, right, if we think about it, in a year from now, we're gonna have documents that contractors are gonna be looking at that are gonna say the building is gonna come down.
I think what we need to do is that, I think you need to educate me on some of this timeliness and how this all works. And then, we can go from there and then I'll report back. Cause I think we should do it offline so I can
That's fine.
understand and then, I'll know
Understood,
what the
right.
role is of the council, when we need to do it and things like that.
Like milestones.
Yeah.
Right, cause Taisu and our team is gonna have to take this down a path,
Right,
right?
they need to
And-
know what's going there, is it the building, is it the site, you know?
Yeah.
Right, so that's why I said for now, just be sensitive to what could go in that footprint.
Yeah.
Don't plan for it to be something that needs to be there in the event that the decision is the 28 building stays.
Right,
Cause then whatever that is,
It's
needs to
gonna
go
reflect-
somewhere
It's
else.
gonna reflect parking, it's gonna reflect traffic flow,
Everything.
Yeah.
site design, so.
Okay,
Right, and
All right,
and the
all
hard part, well,
all right.
another piece of this is we talking about two separate contracts, two separate sets of documents. Sorry, two separate sets of documents, two separate projects. How the site is delineated.
Right.
For the 900 wing and how it's delineated for the new high school. Yeah, that was another conversation we started having.
Because then all of a sudden, you're gonna create an area of disturbance around the 1928 building that doesn't get disturbed.
Chris, could you offer maybe, you know, as the town council needs to deliberate on this, could you offer a time frame of which you, from the process of all the phasing that we need to go through with the architects now, that
Yeah.
we need a decision by, a date?
Yeah,
That's
that's what
getting at.
Kathy and I will talk about
Yeah.
that kind of off. Well,
Yeah,
yeah, and then we'll take that.
yeah, I gotta get a, I
You
gotta
don't want
get,
to have the architects doing two sets of what ifs, just there's one direction they're following.
Right.
Can I ask a question, or maybe make a suggestion with respect to the documents as we move forward with the architects? And this is a question I think maybe starts with this committee, and then if you feel as though the broader committee needs to address it too. I'm hopeful that the way that we move forward in developing a set of construction documents and specs, that we don't end up with allowances. And I just wanted to just set that as a potential direction that our committee can adopt. The reason why I would say, you know, allowances end up creating these weird spaces that you don't know what you're getting. And I'd much rather that we dig in and do our work of really being clear about what we're specifying and potentially having, you know, a backup should numbers not come in. And I guess it's worth maybe having a discussion of the merits of whether or not we get to a level of specificity about the kinds of things that we're going to have in the building, or we just leave it at allowances and decide later on down the road. Ultimately, there's a fixed price that we've got to work within, but I think that there's a greater level of discipline and clarity of what people get by having specs versus allowances. And it doesn't have to be a discussion now. I just put it as an item potentially to explore the merits of moving in either direction.
And that's fine. We can certainly discuss that with the CM as we get a little further down. I think the wording of allowance versus alternate is in play here a little bit, because
Great.
there probably will be some allowances here, but not the way you're referring to an allowance, Michael. You're thinking of an allowance more as we don't know what that wall covering is gonna be yet, so let's just put $5,000 in there. That, when we say allowances in this world, we say, okay, we're gonna have a cleaning allowance, and we're gonna, why don't you carry an allowance of 5,000 man hours or a $20,000 allowance to be able to apply for labor to clean as needed, or things like that. It's not you're not gonna see specification related allowances. There might be some alternates. It might be paint in lieu of, a vinyl mural covering or something like that in terms of an alternate. But in an allowance, it's just gonna be a little bit different. So I agree with you. We thought we can discuss that as we get a little bit
Yeah.
further down. But I just want you to know that there's that
It's not an
distinction.
absolute, it's not a, all or nothing, understood, yeah. But I think it's worth having a conversation so that we pace ourselves with the architects around what we're needing. And if the design committee's created, they understand that they're working on creating what they're looking for or an alternate to that.
Yep.
I don't have any other business, so I think we would just look for a motion to adjourn.
To adjourn.
Second.
Discussion. All in favor?
Well,
Opposed?
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.